Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Extra History with part 5 of the Buddhist Expansion called Across the Silk Road. So, yep, they're expanded again. It's been a while since I've seen this, since, I'm pretty busy, but anywho, let's check out the final part of the Buddhist Expansion and see how they do on the Silk Road, eh? So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go.
China, 645 CE. The imperial court is abuzz with the news. The monk Xuanzang has returned. 16 years before, he'd left on an epic journey to visit the Buddhist heartland of India with the goal of returning with the true sutras. His path, he tells the emperor, was perilous. He was menaced by brigands on the Silk Road and saw colossal jeweled Buddha statues in the kingdoms of Afghanistan. In India, he'd crossed rivers filled with poisoned dragons and converted a group of ferocious cave dwellers. And there, he saw the great stupas of Ashoka, studied under Himalayan masters, and witnessed debates between the followers of the old Theravada ways and his allies in the Mahayana tradition. And now, he's returned with 657 Sanskrit texts, statues of the Buddha, 100 relics, and 3 copies of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. But when offered a high position as a reward, he declines. He has translating to do. And those very translations will change Asia forever.
Yep. From one language to another, thus spanning across the world.
Thanks so much to Incogni for supporting today's historical tale. Traditionally, there are considered to be 3 large groups in Buddhism: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. And cards on the table, we're not going to get too far into Vajrayana here. It's very much its own very complicated thing, and diverts far enough from the others that it'd be hard to do it justice.
Fair.
But briefly, Vajrayana, also known as Tibetan Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, or Esoteric Buddhism, uses elaborate rituals, practices, and visualization techniques that are meant to help unlock the internal Buddha nature of the practitioner and alleviate suffering. Things like chanting secret mantras, ritual aids like mandalas and daggers, the Dalai Lama, and Tantra paintings. This is all Vajrayana.
So
Vajrayana was also the dominant form of Buddhism in medieval Indonesia and also influenced several well-known esoteric sects across Asia, most famously Zen Buddhism. Also, it should be noted, it's Western pop culture's favorite type of Buddhism, since it has an aesthetic that's easy to map onto stories of adventure and mysticism. Here you can kind of think Doctor Strange or Uncharted 2. Now, you'd think that due to its large cultural footprint, Vajrayana would be one of the biggest Buddhist groups.
Let me guess,
but it's actually the smallest, only making up about 6% of Buddhists. Theravada, the next largest, makes up about 36%, and over half of Buddhists, around 53% in one recent poll, identify with the Mahayana school. Though calling it a school is an oversimplification. The Mahayana tradition is incredibly diverse, more a loose family of beliefs and teachings, often contradictory, than a unified group. So it's better understood as an umbrella term like Protestantism. Mahayana probably arose from a host of different beliefs that began developing around the turn of the millennium and were later grouped together. These usually took the form of newer sutras that Theravada didn't recognize in its canon, like the Lotus Sutra or Perfection of Wisdom. Speaking very broadly, what makes Mahayana different is a belief that there have been many Buddhas, some of them avatars or rebirths of a previous Buddha. According to Mahayana traditions, instead of becoming a Buddha and exiting the cycle of life and death, these celestial bodhisattvas have decided to forego that piece of non-existence and reside in heaven-like realms, sometimes known as the Pure Land, where they can affect our world through their compassion. In fact...
Okay, but wasn't... Yeah, I was about to say, with that aspect, wasn't that because, of that cycle that Buddha was like, I have, broken away from it? Which, you gotta do about the here and now rather than your next cycle, Which is kind of weird if you ask me. I guess that's why it's, loose terms and contradictory, like he said, so makes sense in a way. Anywho,
the objective of Mahayana is to become a bodhisattva yourself in order to further alleviate suffering and save others. As a result, much like Hinduism or Chinese folk religion, Mahayana actually has a pantheon of celestial bodhisattvas, and that's no accident. Because though it began in India, it was in China that Mahayana Buddhism really took off. The religion came across the Silk Road via trading caravans, imported through the Central Asian region Ashoka had converted. But it was frequently oral at first, until the 7th century, when a series of monks, like Xuanzang mentioned at the start of this episode, made the perilous journey to bring back and translate sutras. And just a sidebar real quick, Xuanzang's Ibn Battuta-like travelogue would later be mythologized into the epic Journey to the West, where Xuanzang is demoted as main character in favor of the Monkey King, whose origins you can see in our episode here. Exactly why Mahayana changed when it hit China is still debated among academics. One leading theory suggests that translating these Sanskrit sutras into Chinese, by its very nature, made them more culturally Chinese. And that's certainly possible, but a rival theory holds that these beliefs were intentionally adapted in order to appeal to Chinese religious tastes. After all, the term Mahayana, meaning greater vehicle, actually comes from a parable about attracting converts. In the story, a father realizes his house is on fire and wants his children to exit quickly. So he shouts that he has several carts, or vehicles, for them to play with. Each child will get the cart that they like best. When the kids run out, it's revealed that there's actually only one big cart for all of them, the greater vehicle of Mahayana. The moral lesson being that, provided you bring people to enlightenment, the specific rhetoric you use is not important. You say whatever's needed to save them from the fire. So, Mahayana evolved into what's frequently called East Asian Mahayana, particularly by both absorbing local gods and changing its own bodhisattvas.
Oh, okay, I think I get it. So, remember how it was like, in the first part, it was more like adapting like local religions, you know, the original Buddhism, right? Since, you know, it's more piggybacking off like existing beliefs and changing it. Here, it's more piggybacking off Chinese ideals rather than, you know, trying to force over it. You know, like how like there was like Christian converts, but didn't really last long. I think it's like the opposite of that. It's like melding itself into society itself, which hence allow Buddhism to expand like greatly. Which actually makes a lot of sense when you think of it like that, you know? Let the converts come to you naturally rather than force it upon your ideas and breed resentment. I kind of like that. Anyway.
Example, the male bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, morphed along the Silk Road into Guanyin, female bodhisattva of mercy, whose following is one of the greatest in China. Similarly, you might think that this guy is supposed to be Siddhartha Gautama, but if you do, you'd be wrong, because that is the wandering generous monk Budai, who is likely an existing figure in Chinese folklore that Buddhism adopted. He's associated with prosperity and material gain, which is why you often see him in businesses. But that is kind of bananas, right? Because Buddhism was originally based around asceticism and self-denial, and it's morphed into one where you can pray and make offerings in hopes of getting rich. Well, yeah, Buddhism was spread by merchants. But more than that, it became hierarchical. While it originally opposed the Indian caste system, Buddhism morphed to fit with Confucian principles of societal order. Violence, too, became a bigger part of Eastern Asian Buddhism. Monks living in one bandit-ridden province found themselves being ambushed on the road and developed self-defense techniques involving both unarmed combat and with walking sticks.
So the Shaolin monks.
By the 16th century, monks from this temple, Shaolin, were known far and wide for their martial arts. Mahayana Buddhism spread rapidly in East Asia, sweeping through China and into its major trade partners like Vietnam and Korea, where it gained a foothold by the 8th through 10th centuries. Though a major blow came during the Mongol invasions, which destroyed a huge number of monasteries. But ironically, the Mongol Yuan emperors of China ended up converting and helped rebuild the institutions their ancestors destroyed. When Buddhism crossed the Sea of Japan, it hit a barrier. Japan, an island archipelago cut off from mainland Asia, was deeply rooted in a unique animist belief system called Shinto, which initially proved hostile. When Buddhism first entered Japan in 552 CE, imported by immigrants from Korea, the emperor supposedly staged a test. He allowed one noble to worship a Buddha sculpture, you know, just to see what it could do. But then when a smallpox epidemic broke out, the emperor panicked. Thinking he'd angered the Shinto spirits, he'd ordered the Buddha image thrown in the river. Then the epidemic promptly got worse and the palace caught fire, so they fished the statue out and apologized, giving Buddhism official recognition. Then a later monarch, Prince Shotoku, would be largely responsible for popularizing the faith through temple building and patronage. Yet Buddhism would never be the sole religion of Japan. The emperors were careful to keep Shintoism and Buddhism in a state of coexistence, because Buddhism had something very useful: an afterlife. One of the things that sets Mahayana apart from Shintoism and the other sects of Buddhism is the idea we mentioned earlier of rebirth in a pure land. These celestial realms are perfected planes of existence shaped by powerful bodhisattvas like Guan Yin, and adherents can be reborn there after death through devotion, special chants, or in one case, by repeating the name of a certain Buddha. In these realms, all distractions and suffering are removed, and a reborn person can become a bodhisattva over a single lifetime. And that was an attractive prospect, since Shinto doesn't have a very well-defined afterlife. In fact, to this day, Japanese people often live by the saying, born a Shinto, die a Buddhist, where they adhere to both faiths, but allow Buddhist clergy to handle their funeral arrangements. Now, we know we've covered a lot during this series, and we could talk pretty endlessly about this topic, from how monasteries could become powerful city-states, or even the twisting of Buddhism in World War II. But that's really all the time we have for now. However, we hope that we've given you a basis for understanding how this fascinating religion both spread and altered. From the mind of one man in ancient India came a concept that would change the world and change itself in that process. A faith of humble temples and golden statues, of warrior monks and peaceful kings. A religion that came to be both without a god and pay homage to a pantheon of celestial beings. A beautiful, unified contradiction, with the same mantras chanted from the tops of the Himalayas to the coasts of Indonesia. Truly, a world of enlightenment. And while I think...
And true, and like, you know, he tended, everyone can do it, you know? It's not based on, like, hierarchy, like he said. Anyone can do it, and anyone can achieve these things, which makes it incredible. Well, there you go. The Buddhist Expansion. Let me know what you guys think. Till next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya.